The night sky above Neo-London was full of light. Towers of glass and silver touched the clouds. Air cars moved in long, glowing lines between the spires. Inside the tallest tower, a great hall shone with golden light. Guests in fine clothes stood, in small groups, speaking in low voices and laughing softly. At the center of the hall stood the host of the evening. Victor Aurelian was tall and proud. His hair was as perfect as his suit. In one hand, he held a crystal glass filled with a bright red drink. The guests all knew his name. He was the heir to Aurelian Industries, one of the richest corporations in the human colonies. People like to say he was as sharp in business as he was in fashion. Tonight, he had something new to show them. On a raised platform at the far end of the room sat the object that had brought everyone here. It was a piano, but unlike any made on Earth. Its body was black as midnight and smooth like a mirror. Thin lines of silver traced across its surface in patterns that looked almost alive. It was said to have been built hundreds of years ago by the alien artisans of the Lyra cluster. Victor stepped onto the platform. The crowd grew quiet. He smiled and raised his glass. "My friends," he began, his voice smooth, "you have all seen fine instruments before, but tonight you see the rarest of them all. This is the quantum resonance piano, once the property of the Solari court itself." A soft murmur ran through the guests. Even those who did not care much for music had heard of it. It was said that the piano responded not only to touch but to the mind and heart of the player. Some called it a work of art. Others called it a puzzle no one could solve. Victor went on. "There is a legend about this piano. It is said that whoever can play the Song of Nine Suns will unlock its true power. No human has ever done it. No alien has either. Not even the finest AI could complete it." He let the words hang in the air for a moment. Then he laughed. "I will make you all an offer. If anyone here can play it, I will give them anything they wish. Even my hand in marriage, if that is what they want." The crowd laughed with him. They thought it was only a joke. The thought of anyone here being able to play the song was too strange to take seriously. Far from the stage, near the wide glass wall that showed the city lights, a man in a plain gray uniform pushed a small cleaning cart. He moved quietly, not looking at the guests. His name was Elijah Brooks. Most people never noticed him. He had been working in the tower for many years. His job was to keep the hall spotless before and after events like this one, but tonight his eyes kept going to the piano. He had seen it earlier when it was brought in under guard. Even then, it had caught his attention. Something about its shape and shine made him think of old music from his childhood. He could almost hear a melody in his mind. Near him, two guests stood with drinks in their hands. One of them was an alien diplomat from the Vega colonies. His skin was pale blue and his eyes were wide and calm. He leaned toward Victor and asked, "Have any humans ever tried to play it?" Victor smiled in a way that was almost a smirk. "Only in stories," he said. "In truth, it is beyond them. This piano needs precision no human could keep, and depth of feeling no machine could fake. It is an instrument for legends, not janitors." Some of the guests laughed at that last word. They did not notice the way Elijah's hands tightened on the handle of his cart. He was used to such talk. But tonight, for some reason, the words stayed with him. He wheeled his cart past the platform. The piano seemed to shine more brightly as he drew near. He felt an odd pull toward it, as if the notes of a song were calling him without sound. His grandmother had once told him stories about music that could open the stars. He had always thought they were just tales to make a child dream. Victor's voice rang out again. "Well, who will take the challenge? Who among you will dare to touch it?" One by one, the guests shook their heads or gave polite excuses. They did not wish to fail in front of so many eyes. The alien diplomat gave a small bow and said it was not for him to try. Then a woman in the crowd pointed toward Elijah. "What about him?" she said with a laugh. "Perhaps your janitor will surprise us." The room broke into soft chuckles. Victor turned his head and saw Elijah standing near the platform. "Come then," Victor called. "If you think you can play, the stage is yours." His tone was light, but his eyes were curious. Elijah looked at the piano again. The silver lines along its body seemed to shift like water. He felt his heartbeat slow, as if the world around him had gone quiet. Without a word, he stepped forward. The laughter in the room faded a little as the guests watched him climb the steps to the platform. Victor stepped aside with a smile that was almost mocking. "Remember, the Song of Nine Sons," he said. "It has broken the pride of many greater than you." Elijah sat on the bench. His fingers hovered over the keys. The surface was cool under his skin. For a moment he closed his eyes. In the dark behind his eyelids he heard the soft, humming voice of his grandmother singing to him long ago on warm summer nights. The melody came back like a memory he had been waiting for. He opened his eyes and placed his hands on the keys. The crowd leaned forward without meaning to. Somewhere deep inside the piano, a low note began to hum. The room held its breath. The hum inside the piano grew stronger. It was not like the deep note of a normal instrument. It was as if the sound came from somewhere far away and yet was right under the fingertips. Elijah's hands rested on the keys, not pressing yet, only touching them lightly. From the edge of the platform, Victor Aurelian gave a small laugh. "Any time now," he said in a tone meant to amuse the crowd. The guests chuckled softly. Elijah did not answer. His eyes stayed fixed on the keys. The silver lines on the piano's surface moved in slow waves, reacting to his presence. No one else in the room seemed to notice the movement. They only saw a janitor sitting in a place meant for the galaxy's most gifted musicians. Two young men near the back whispered to each other. "He is going to freeze," one said, "or hit the wrong key right away." The other nodded, smiling. The alien diplomat from the Vega colonies tilted his head. His large blue eyes watched with a calm that was different from the others. There was no mockery in his gaze. It was more like curiosity. Elijah finally pressed a single key. The note that came out was pure and bright. It hung in the air longer than it should have. A thin ribbon of light rose from the key and floated upward before fading away. Several guests blinked in surprise. He pressed another key. This time the note was lower, warmer. A second ribbon of light joined the first. The silver lines on the piano began to glow faintly. The hum deepened. A laugh broke the growing silence. It came from a man in a long red coat who leaned on a cane. "Pretty lights," he said, "but anyone can press a few keys." Others chuckled again. Elijah's face did not change. His mind was far from the voices around him. He let his fingers find the shapes they had known in childhood when he played an old wooden piano in his grandmother's small home. Back then, the songs were simple, but one song had always been different. It had strange jumps and changes, almost, like two songs woven together. Now, without thinking, his hands began to play that song. The first few notes flowed gently into the air. The ribbons of light grew brighter. The hum in the room shifted into a rhythm, like the slow beating of a heart. The crowd's murmurs faded as the sound wrapped around them. Even those who did not care for music found themselves standing still. The melody was not only heard, but felt. It stirred something deep, like an old memory that could not be named. Victor's smile grew thinner. He had expected a clumsy attempt, a quick failure. This was different. He leaned slightly closer, his glass forgotten in his hand. The alien diplomat took a single slow step forward. His expression was still calm, but his eyes now held a trace of wonder. He spoke softly in his own language, a word that meant awakening. Elijah's fingers moved faster, but not in a showy way. The notes rose and fell like waves, each one carrying a thread of light into the air. The silver patterns across the piano shifted in time with the music. They began to form shapes, stars, suns, and lines between them like the paths of ships. A woman near the front put a hand to her mouth. "I can see them," she whispered. "The 9 suns." Others began to notice too. The ribbons of light were joining together above the piano, creating a faint map in the air. The shapes glowed softly, almost like constellations seen through a clear night sky. The man in the red coat no longer smiled. He stared up at the lights, his cane forgotten. Victor spoke again, but this time his voice was quieter. "Impossible," he said under his breath. The alien diplomat moved closer to the platform. "It is not impossible," he said in clear human speech. "It is the beginning of the song." Elijah was only halfway through. His hands moved with a natural grace, never hesitating. Each note felt like a step into a place he somehow already knew. He could almost hear his grandmother's voice humming along, though she had passed many years ago. The crowd stood silent now. The laughter from earlier was gone. The only sound was the music, and even that felt larger than the hall itself. It was as if the glass walls had opened and the stars outside were leaning in to listen. Victor found himself feeling something strange. At first, it was pride, thinking perhaps his event would be remembered after all. But that pride quickly turned into something else, a faint unease. This was no trick or accident. The janitor was unlocking something he himself could never touch. Elijah's song reached a point where the notes seemed to climb higher and higher, pulling the light with them. The map above the piano shimmered and then shifted. The 9 suns aligned, forming a circle. Lines of light stretched between them until they looked like a great wheel turning slowly in the air. Gasps rose from the guests. A few stepped back, unsure if this was still only music. Elijah felt the moment arrive, the part of the song that had always seemed unfinished in his memory. Tonight, the missing pieces came to him without effort. His hands struck the keys in a smooth, final pattern. A deep tone rolled out from the piano, filling every corner of the hall. The light above grew bright and then folded in on itself, disappearing into the piano in a single flash. The hum faded. The silver lines on the piano stilled. Elijah lowered his hands into his lap. For a long moment, no one spoke. The guests stared at the piano, at Elijah, at each other. The alien diplomat was the first to break the silence. "That," he said, slowly, was the Song of 9 Suns, played true. Victor did not move. His mind was full of questions, but none of them could reach his tongue. Elijah stood up from the bench. He gave the piano one last glance as if saying goodbye. Then he turned to step down from the platform. The sound of his footsteps on the wood was the only thing in the quiet hall. The guests still said nothing. Some eyes held awe. Others held confusion. A few still carried the pride of those who did not like to be proven wrong. But no one laughed. The hall remained quiet after Elijah stepped down from the platform. It was the kind of silence that felt heavy, as if the air itself was holding its breath. The golden lights from the ceiling reflected on the polished floor. No one reached for their drinks. No one whispered. Even the distant hum of the city seemed far away. Victor Aurelian finally took a slow breath. His eyes stayed on Elijah as if trying to solve a puzzle. "That was unexpected," he said in a voice that was calm but strained. Elijah did not answer. He was not looking for approval. His gaze drifted once more toward the piano. The silver patterns on its surface now still seemed to pulse faintly like the heartbeat of something alive. The alien diplomat stepped forward. His tall frame and pale blue skin caught the light in a way that made him seem almost like a figure from the song itself. He bowed his head slightly toward Elijah. "I have seen this instrument in the courts of my people," he said. Many have tried to play it. None have been answered by it in this way. A murmur rose in the crowd. Some of the guests leaned toward each other, speaking quickly in low tones. Others kept their eyes on the piano, as if hoping it might move again. Victor gave a short laugh, but it lacked the confidence from earlier. Well, our janitor has surprised us all. Still, it is only music. A trick of the instrument, perhaps. Nothing more. The alien diplomat turned his head toward Victor. It is not a trick. The Song of Nine Suns is no simple melody. It is a key. To play it is to align with the rhythm of the stars themselves. That is why it is feared and respected. That is why it was hidden. The words made some guests uneasy. They shifted on their feet. Others were curious, their eyes bright. Elijah kept silent, but his thoughts were far away. He remembered his grandmother's old stories. She had spoken of a song that could open the sky and show the paths between worlds. He had thought they were only bedtime tales. Now he was not so sure. One of the guests, a woman in a silver dress, spoke up. If it is a key, what does it open? The alien diplomat's voice lowered. Stargates, old ones, built before any of our civilizations walked the galaxy. They have been sleeping for thousands of years. The song can wake them. The words felt like a spark in the room. The idea of ancient gates stirred the imagination. Such gates could lead anywhere, to new worlds, to treasure, to dangers no one could name. Victor's expression tightened. He was a man who measured the value of everything in wealth and control. If what the diplomat said was true, the piano was worth far more than the art piece he had thought it to be. His earlier offer of anything they wish now felt like a careless risk. He stepped toward Elijah. You have talent, he said, and you clearly have some connection to this legend. Name your reward and I will see that you have it. Money, a house, a place in my company. Elijah shook his head slowly. I do not want those things. Some of the guests smiled faintly at what they thought was a humble answer. But the alien diplomat's gaze sharpened. He saw something deeper in Elijah's tone. What do you want then? Victor asked, his voice firmer. Elijah looked toward the piano once more. I want it to be played again, not for a show, not for one night, but so it can teach us what it knows. It should not be locked away. Victor's lips pressed together. He was not used to being told what should or should not be done with something he owned. It is mine, he said. Before the moment could turn tense, the alien diplomat stepped between them. Perhaps ownership is not the question, he said. If this man has played the song, the piano has chosen him. That is rare. It means the instrument sees him as part of its own design. Victor gave a short laugh, though it did not sound amused. Chosen by a piano. That is a strange thing to say. The diplomat's eyes held steady. Strange, but true. While they spoke, something began to change in the room. Elijah felt it first, a faint vibration under his feet, like the hum of the piano, but far away. The golden lights above flickered slightly. Guests turned their heads, looking around. The vibration grew stronger, not enough to shake the room, but enough to make the glass wall tremble softly. The diplomat's eyes widened. It has begun. What has begun? Victor asked sharply. The awakening, the diplomat said. The song has reached the gates. One of them is listening. The words made the crowd shift uneasily. Some of them moved toward the exits. Others stayed, caught between fear and fascination. Elijah felt the vibration fade. A deep silence followed, heavier than before. Somewhere in that silence, he thought he heard a low tone, like the first note of the song, but distant, as if it were coming from across the stars. The alien diplomat turned to him. If you play it again, the gate will open. But you must... No, it will not be like tonight. The whole galaxy may see it. Victor stepped forward quickly. If such a thing is possible, it will be done under my control. I will choose how and when. Elijah looked at him calmly. You may own the piano, but you cannot own the song. The hall went still again. Victor's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The guests waited, sensing that something larger than the evening's event had begun. Elijah knew then that his life had changed. The music he had carried quietly in his memory was no longer just his. It was a thread that reached far beyond the city, far beyond Earth, and it was pulling him toward something he could not yet see. The great hall felt like the center of the world. Outside the glass walls, the night over Neo-London glowed with the lights of the towers, but inside, all eyes stayed on the black piano. The air was heavy with expectation. Elijah stood on the platform again. His hands rested at his sides. The alien diplomat stood near the edge, his expression calm but watchful. Victor Aurelian remained close as well, though his smile had faded into a tight, controlled look. Around them, the guests formed a wide circle, keeping their distance as if the piano might leap to life. The faint vibration under the floor had returned. It was stronger now, like the slow pulse of something huge and far away. The glass wall shivered in time with it. The diplomat spoke quietly. When you play the song again, you will not be alone in hearing it. The gate will answer. Once it does, there is no turning back. Elijah nodded. His eyes drifted to the keys. They looked the same as before, smooth and black, but now he knew they were more than just keys. They were part of a design much older than this hall or this city. Victor's voice broke the moment. Remember, he said, you are playing in my hall and on my instrument. Whatever happens, it will be under my name. Elijah did not look at him. His thoughts were already moving with the rhythm of the song. He sat down, placing his fingers on the cool keys. For a few heartbeats, he was still. Then he began to play. The first notes rose into the air like threads of silver light. They curved and twined above the piano, just as they had before. But this time they did not fade. They grew brighter. The hum under the floor deepened, shaking the platform. The guests drew back a step, their eyes fixed on the light. The melody moved forward, steady and sure. Elijah's hands found each note as if they had always been there, waiting for this moment. The ribbons of light stretched higher, filling the space above the platform. The shapes of the 9 suns appeared once more, glowing like small stars in the air. Then something new happened. Lines of light shot outward from the suns, striking the glass wall. Instead of passing through, the lines spread across it, covering it with a shifting map of stars. The view of Neo-London vanished, replaced by a vision of deep space. Gasps filled the hall. Some guests stumbled backward, pressing against the far walls. Others moved forward despite their fear, unable to look away. The alien diplomat's voice was low but urgent. The gate is opening, Elijah kept playing. The song climbed higher, the notes weaving together into patterns that seemed to pull the stars on the glass closer. The 9 suns spun slowly, their light spilling into the hall. Victor's eyes were wide now. Whatever he had imagined, it was nothing like this. What is on the other side? He asked. The diplomat shook his head. Every gate leads somewhere different. Some lead to places of wonder. Others are less kind. We will not know until it answers fully. The final part of the song came. Elijah struck the keys with a gentle but unshakable rhythm. The light flared. The stars on the glass rushed forward until they filled the entire wall. Then the glass was gone. In its place was a vast tunnel of light, stretching away into the distance. It was not made of stone or metal, but of pure energy. It pulsed with the same rhythm as the song, Far at the other end, a faint golden glow could be seen, like a sun rising beyond a horizon. A warm breeze swept through the hall, though no door had opened. The scent of air that had never touched earth filled the guests' lungs. It was clean, sharp, and strange. Elijah's hands fell still. The last note hung in the air and then faded. The tunnel remained, silent and waiting. No one spoke for a long moment. The guests stared into the light, their faces lit with awe and fear. Victor stepped closer to the opening but stopped a few feet away. He could feel the pull of it, as if the tunnel were gently tugging at his very bones. "We could go through," he said in a low voice. "We could be the first." The diplomat's tone was firm. "If you go without knowing what lies beyond, you may not return. Gates are not doors. They are choices." Elijah stood, his gaze steady on the golden glow at the end of the tunnel. He did not feel fear, only a strange certainty that this was not an accident. A voice came from somewhere deep inside the light. It was not spoken in any language the guests knew, but each of them understood it. The voice said only one thing: "Welcome." The word carried a feeling with it, like the first step into sunlight after a long night. The diplomat's eyes widened. "It knows you," he said, looking at Elijah. Victor's thoughts raced. The piano, the song, the gate, all of it was now tied to the man he had mocked. He felt the sting of that truth, but pushed it aside. There was too much at stake. "We need to secure this," he said quickly. "No one enters or leaves without my order." Elijah did not answer. His eyes stayed on the tunnel, the rhythm of the song still echoing in his mind. Somewhere beyond that golden light was a place waiting for them, and for the first time in his life, he felt that the stories his grandmother had told him might have been true all along. The guests began to whisper again, some speaking of exploration, others of danger. The hall was alive with tension. Elijah stepped down from the platform, but his path took him not toward the crowd, but toward the gate itself. The pull grew stronger as he approached. He stopped just before the edge of the light, close enough to feel its warmth. The diplomat moved to his side. "If you cross, you will change more than your own life," he said. Elijah nodded slowly. "I know." And though he did not step through yet, his heart was already on the other side. The golden tunnel shimmered at the far end of the hall, silent but alive. It pulsed faintly, as if breathing. The guests stayed close to the walls, watching it like people might watch a sleeping giant. No one dared get too close except Elijah, and the alien diplomat who stood only a few steps from its edge. Victor Aurelian moved quickly through the hall, speaking in a sharp voice to his security team. "Seal the entrances. No one leaves. No one takes a picture. This discovery belongs to Aurelian Industries until we decide otherwise." His men hurried to obey. The alien diplomat did not turn his head. "You cannot own this," he said calmly. Victor stopped and looked at him. "Everything has an owner. That is how the world works." "This," the diplomat replied, "is older than your world. It was built when your species was not yet walking on two legs. It belongs to no one and to everyone." Some of the guests nodded quietly, but no one spoke too loudly in Victor's presence. Elijah's eyes stayed fixed on the golden light at the far end of the tunnel. "Where does it lead?" he asked. The diplomat finally turned to face him. "Long before humans, long before my people, there was another civilization. We call them the first makers. They spread across the galaxy and built the gates to connect their worlds. Each gate was tuned to a certain frequency, a song of its own. But when they vanished, the songs were lost. Without the song, the gates fell silent." "And the Song of Nine Sons?" Elijah asked. "It is the key to one of the oldest gates," the diplomat said. Legends say it leads to a place where knowledge from the first makers is kept. Some believe it is a library of worlds. Others believe it is a forge where new stars can be born. But there are darker stories too. Some say the first makers locked away something dangerous there, something that must never be freed. The guests whispered again, their voices rising, with both excitement and fear. Victor's eyes narrowed. If such a place exists, it could hold technology beyond anything we've seen. Whoever controls it could shape the galaxy. That is reason enough to claim it now. The diplomat's voice grew firm. That is also the reason to be careful. The first makers vanished without a trace. If their works are not understood, they can destroy as easily as they can create. Victor looked at Elijah. You opened it once. You can do it again. If you help me, I will make sure you and your family are taken care of for the rest of your lives. Elijah shook his head slowly. This isn't about money. This is bigger than us. Victor's tone hardened. You think bigger than us means without us? If you walk through that gate, everything you find will come back to this world, and someone will decide what to do with it. Better it be me than some government or pirate fleet. Elijah turned back to the diplomat. Why me? Why now? The diplomat studied him for a moment before answering. The gates are tied to thought and feeling. A perfect balance of logic and emotion is rare among my kind. It is rare among yours, too. Most who try to play the Song of Nine Sons fail because they lean too far toward one or the other. You carry both. The piano recognized that and answered you. Elijah thought of his grandmother's voice again, of her songs that made no sense at the time, but stayed in his mind for years. She knew, he murmured. The diplomat nodded. Perhaps she did. Perhaps the song has been carried quietly through your people for generations, waiting for someone to give it voice again. The tension in the hall thickened. Some guests were already choosing sides in their minds, those who wanted Victor's power and wealth to lead, and those who believed the gate should be free to all. A sharp chime rang from the golden tunnel. The sound was pure, like a bell, heard across water. The diplomat's eyes widened. It is calling. Victor stepped forward quickly. Then we answer. We take a team through. We bring back what we can. The diplomat's hand rose slightly in warning. If you send people who do not understand the song, the gate may not open for them, or worse, it may take them somewhere else entirely. Then Elijah goes first, Victor said without hesitation. We send him with our best scientists and security. He opens the way, and we secure it. Elijah looked at the golden light. If I go, it will not be to secure it for one man. It will be to see what is there, and to make sure it is not used to harm. Victor's jaw tightened. We will see about that. The chime came again, softer this time, but carrying a strange warmth. Elijah felt it deep in his chest, like the opening notes of the song. He took a slow step toward the light. The diplomat stepped with him. If you go through, the song will guide you. But remember, the gate responds to the heart as much as to the mind. If your purpose changes, the path may change with it. Elijah nodded. He understood now that this was not just a doorway, it was a test. Behind them, the guests spoke in hurried voices. Some feared the danger, others hungered for what might be found. Victor began making calls to his corporate ships, already thinking of how to take control of whatever lay beyond. Elijah ignored them all. The golden glow seemed to fill his vision. The hum in the floor matched the rhythm of his heartbeat. The diplomat's voice came one last time, quiet but steady. The first makers built these gates for a reason. Perhaps you will learn what that reason was, or perhaps you will become part of it. Elijah breathed in the strange, clean air from the tunnel. He did not know what waited on the other side, but he knew he would find out. And somewhere deep in the galaxy, the other gates were listening. The golden light filled the hall like a sunrise without a sun. It painted every face in warm color, yet it was not heat that came from it, only a quiet hum that seemed to touch the inside of the mind. Elijah stood at the edge of the tunnel. The song still echoed in him, a gentle rhythm that told him to move forward. The alien diplomat stood beside him, calm and steady. Victor Aurelian was just behind them, speaking into a small device, ordering his security and scientists to prepare. The guests stayed far back, though some leaned forward as if their curiosity might pull them closer. Victor's voice cut through the hum. "You go first, Elijah. Then my people follow. We do this fast. The sooner we are through, the sooner we claim what is there." Elijah did not answer. He kept his eyes on the light. The diplomat gave a short nod, as if to say the choice was already made. With one last deep breath, Elijah stepped forward. His foot crossed the edge of the golden glow, and the air around him changed. It was softer, cooler, and full of a faint scent, like rain on stone. The hum grew louder, but not in his ears, in his bones. The next step carried him inside the tunnel. The walls seemed alive, shifting with patterns of light that flowed like water but held the sharpness of crystal. The floor was smooth and warm under his shoes. Each step felt lighter, as though the tunnel itself wanted him to keep going. The diplomat followed silently. Behind them came two of Victor's security guards in dark armor, moving with careful precision. A scientist named Dr. Lena Miles was next, her eyes wide as she studied every flicker of the walls. Victor himself came last, his expression set and focused. The moment they were all inside, the tunnel began to move. It was not walking now, it was being carried, though their feet still touched the floor. The light around them brightened and flowed faster, and for a moment Elijah felt as if they were gliding through a stream of music. There was no sense of time. Seconds and minutes felt the same. The hum shifted into something almost like words, though they could not be understood. The diplomat closed his eyes, listening as if to a memory. Then the light at the far end began to open, stretching wider until it revealed a sky. It was not the black of space or the blue of earth. It was deep silver, scattered with faint lines, of light that curved like rivers in the air. Beneath it stretched a land of soft glowing fields, dotted with tall spires that looked grown, not built. Each spire shimmered faintly, and their surfaces were covered in patterns that moved slowly, like breathing. The group stepped out of the tunnel and onto a surface that looked like glass but felt like warm soil. The air was clean and carried a faint taste of metal and flowers. Dr. Miles crouched down and touched the ground. "It's alive," she whispered. Victor's eyes scanned the horizon. "If this is a city, it's empty. Where is everyone?" The diplomat stepped forward slowly. "The first makers built places that could think. Some of them slept for millions of years, waiting for voices they would answer. This may be one of those places." Elijah turned in a slow circle, taking it all in. There was no wind, yet the tall spires swayed gently. In the distance, a large archway pulsed with the same golden light as the tunnel they had come through. A soft sound rose from the ground beneath them, like the first note of a song. It came again, and with it the air shimmered. Shapes began to form. Faint outlines of figures, tall and thin, with faces hidden in light. They did not move like living beings, but like projections made of memory. The diplomat lowered his head in respect. "Echoes," he said. "Remnants of those who built this place." Victor stepped toward them. "If they are only echoes, then they can't stop us." One of the figures turned its head toward Elijah. The hum grew stronger. Elijah's heart pounded, not in fear but in recognition. The figure lifted a hand and pointed toward the distant archway. Dr. Miles's voice shook. "It wants you to go there." Victor glanced at Elijah. Then we follow the invitation, and we find what's inside. The group began walking toward the archway. The ground changed under their feet. Now it was covered in small, glowing threads that pulsed with every step. The air grew warmer, and the silver sky above deepened in color. Halfway there, the hum changed again. This time, the shapes around them grew brighter. Some moved closer, as if curious. Others stayed at a distance. The diplomat walked with careful steps. "Do not anger them," he warned softly. "Even as echoes, they may control this place." Victor smirked but said nothing. His eyes were on the archway, which was now large enough to see details. Its surface was covered in symbols that shifted like living script. When they reached it, the hum stopped. The sudden silence felt heavy, as though the place itself was waiting. Elijah stepped forward, laying his hand on the surface. It was warm, and the moment he touched it, the symbols froze. Then, slowly, they rearranged into a pattern he had seen before, in the song his grandmother had taught him. Dr. Miles gasped. "It's the same sequence from the piano, the same melody." The diplomat's voice was low. "The gate recognizes you. Whatever is inside, it will open only for you." Victor moved closer. "Then open it, now." Elijah hesitated. The song, in his mind, seemed to whisper that this was more than a doorway. It was a choice. Once opened, there might be no turning back. He closed his eyes and began to hum the melody. The archway pulsed in time with his voice, the symbols glowing brighter until the center of the arch filled with swirling silver light. The diplomat took a slow breath. "The path is ready." Elijah stepped through first. The silver light wrapped around him, and for a heartbeat, he felt as if he were falling through a sky full of stars. Then the ground was under his feet again. He stood in a vast chamber, lit by a sun that hung impossibly close, but did not burn. Around him, structures floated, in the air, each holding objects that glowed faintly. They looked like instruments, tools, and devices, some small enough to fit in his palm, others as large as buildings. The rest of the group stepped in behind him. Victor's eyes lit up with greed. "We have found it. The treasure of the first makers." The diplomat's gaze was solemn, or their warning. Somewhere deep in the chamber, a low tone began to rise. The low tone in the chamber did not stop. It moved through the air like a wave, making the floating objects tremble. Elijah stood very still, trying to understand what the sound was saying. It was not just a noise, it was a call. The alien diplomats, eyes closed as if listening to something only he could hear. Dr. Miles looked around with awe, her hands twitching as if she wanted to touch the strange devices. Victor Aurelian was already stepping forward, his gaze locked on a large crystal sphere that glowed in deep gold. "This," Victor said with a confident smile, "is the heart of this place. If I take it, I control everything here." The diplomat shook his head. "You cannot take it. This is not a machine to own. It is a mind older than any world we know. It will choose who can hold its power." Victor ignored him. He walked toward the sphere, reaching out his hand. But before he could touch it, the low tone rose sharply. The sphere floated higher, moving away from him. A beam of silver light shot down from the air above, forming a pattern on the floor. The pattern was the same melody Elijah had played on the piano in the hall. Dr. Miles whispered, "It's calling. For you again, Elijah." Elijah stepped forward. His heart beat faster. The song from his childhood filled his mind, each note clear and bright. He hummed it softly, and the beam of light bent toward him, wrapping around his hands like warm water. The moment he touched the sphere, the entire chamber changed. The walls melted into visions. Not real walls, but shifting images. He saw endless worlds, some green and alive, some dark and silent. He saw cities built in the clouds, oceans with creatures that glowed like stars, and skies full of ships, unlike any human design. Then the visions focused on Earth. He saw it as it was now, blue, green, and full of life. Then he saw flashes of what could be, bright towers of light, clean rivers, peaceful lands. But he also saw the other path. Cities broken, skies filled with fire, oceans empty and dead. The sphere spoke without words. Elijah understood it as clearly as if someone whispered in his ear. One path gives, the other takes. The song opens both. The choice is yours. The diplomat spoke softly. It is the legacy of the first makers, a gift to guide a world toward harmony, or a weapon that can shape it into silence. It offers both because it does not decide for you. Victor stepped closer, his voice low but urgent. Do you hear yourself? With this we could rule, protect, control everything. We could end war by making sure only one voice is obeyed. Dr. Miles shook her head. Or we could destroy everything by mistake. Elijah looked at them. It's not just for me. This is for all of us. But I think they left it for someone who understands music. Music is harmony. It's not about control. It's about balance. The sphere pulsed in his hands. The tone changed, becoming softer. Elijah knew the choice had to be made now. He closed his eyes and thought of the first time he touched a piano key as a child. He thought of the old songs his grandmother sang, the way they told stories without needing words. He thought of the people back on Earth, some good, some selfish, but all capable of change. When he opened his eyes, he took a deep breath. I choose the path that gives, not the one that takes. The sphere glowed so brightly that Victor had to shield his eyes. The tone swelled, and the visions of broken cities faded, replaced by visions of growth, learning, and peace. Then the sphere floated upward, spinning slowly. Threads of light spread from it in every direction, passing through the chamber walls and into the sky. The silver sky outside the chamber rippled like water, and streams of light shot outward into the distance. The diplomat smiled faintly. It is sending its gift to your world. Victor looked frustrated, but said nothing. Dr. Miles wiped her eyes. We just changed history. The sphere slowly descended and rested in front of Elijah once more. It pulsed gently, as if thanking him, then drifted back to its place high above. The chamber began to fade. The spires outside shimmered and slowly dissolved into the silver air. The archway they had come through reappeared behind them, its light growing brighter. The diplomat spoke. It is time to leave. This place will sleep again until another song calls it. They walked back through the archway. The silver light wrapped around them once more, and in a blink they were back in the golden tunnel. The hum was quieter now, more like a farewell. When they stepped out into the concert hall, the guests were still there, waiting. The golden glow vanished, and the piano sat alone at the center of the stage. Elijah walked to it and touched the keys. The melody came naturally, soft and steady. The sound carried through the hall, filling it with peace. When the last note faded, the room was silent. Then, slowly, the guests began to applaud, not for a show, but for something they did not fully understand, yet could feel. Victor stood apart, silent, his mind already working on other plans. Dr. Miles was speaking quietly with the diplomat. Elijah closed the piano lid and looked out at the people. He knew most of them would never know what had happened beyond that golden light. But maybe, in time, they would see the changes. Maybe they would hear the harmony growing. The diplomat placed a hand on Elijah's shoulder. The first makers chose well. Remember, the song is always there, but it must be played with care. Elijah nodded. I'll remember. Outside, the city lights seemed a little brighter, and somewhere deep in the earth, the music of the first makers had begun to play, guiding the future note by note.